Okay, so Simon Binns, you're editor at Lad Bible, which is the largest social publisher in the world.
That's right, yeah. We've got more than 14 million people across our channels, primarily Facebook, I suppose, about 38 million. Instagram, 10 million. Snapchat, I think about 2 million. Twitter, 2.5. So we're developing audience in TikTok. I think we're up over kind of 1 million now. So anywhere from kind of 13 up to about 55 is our age range, and the split between male and female on Facebook certainly is probably about 55% male and about 45% female. So that's kind of where we're shooting at.
Sure, and just tell me a little bit about Lad Bible's sort of evolution, its journey from how it began to where it is now.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, like most good small businesses, it just starts with a few people doing something that other people weren't, really. I think the founders of the business were really switched on to social and shared content, and it kind of grew and grew, really. I think if you look back at I've been there 2 years, certainly we're at a point where the audience was bigger than traditional news publishers, and I find myself using that phrase often, but I suppose what that means can change depending who you talk to. But the audience had grown to such a point where it was bigger than most publishers, and you kind of think, right, okay, well, what do we do now? So you've got this scale of audience, this massive audience. What do you do with them? Like the traffic and the engagement we're getting at that point was far bigger than some of the bigger kind of news titles like the Mirror or the Mail or whoever. It was just a case of like, well, okay, what does the brand stand for now? Because what Lad Bible was 8 years ago is different to what it was 5 years ago, is different to what it was 3 years ago. And I think brands evolve, don't they? Certainly in publishing, and so you've got to kind of decide what you are, and that is, I suppose, that's defined by the content, really.
Sure, and give us a sense of what kind of content does Lad Bible produce now?
I think our kind of core stuff is always going to be news and entertainment, and I suppose picking out the big subjects, but conveying the parts of it that our audience, a younger social audience, really care about. So when you're talking about Brexit, okay, there's an appetite for Brexit content, whereas all of the news channels were flooding it with everything and talking about the backstop and all that kind of stuff. Lad Bible audience, social audience, wants to know, can I go on holiday? Do I need a new passport? Kind of that, what does it mean for me in my everyday normal life kind of thing? So I kept hearing about the backstop, and I just thought, no one's taken any time to explain what it is. No one knows what it is. You're not telling people what it is. So to immediately switch off, they don't understand it. They can't relate to it. It doesn't mean anything to them in their everyday life. So I think that's at the front of the content that we do, rather, even if it's kind of like, here's the big news that will affect you now. Here's what everyone's talking about in terms of Netflix programs. Here's a big event that you might want to be a part of. Here's something that you and your friends will recognise in yourselves if we're talking about good kind of everyday hero stories, people doing something really kind or inspiring or funny. It's that relatable touch point, I suppose. So everything's got off those themes of being positive and useful and uplifting. The content vertical can change. It's just that I suppose it's those elements that have to remain.
Sure, and they're really kind of classic ways of describing what a lot of good journalism amounts to, really. But I guess you've married that with a really good understanding of your audience.
Yeah, and I think that's key, actually. And I think that publishing now is very much defined by titles that understand their audience and those that don't. And I think those that understand how you tell a story on a different platform. So we've got 4 or 5 platforms, 6 platforms, whatever. You could tell one story 5 or 6 different ways, because the way you tell a story and sell it on Facebook is different to how you would sell it on Instagram, just because the mode of that platform is quicker and you have less time. Snapchat, even less time. Twitter, you've got 142 characters. How are you going to tell this story to this audience based on a platform they have chosen to use? So, I used to work at the NN, I've worked at the BBC, and everyone's kind of in each other's area now. Everyone's got visual, everyone's got audio pretty much. So many people do podcasts. Everyone's got an app. All of these kind of platforms, everyone's across each other's toes, I suppose. But the key thing is, how do I tell this story? I went in and did a bit of training at the BBC a while ago, and I was chatting to some young social editor from one of the regions somewhere, and she was saying, like, can you talk to my boss, because he just thinks that if you take a 3-minute package from the TV news and put it on our Facebook page, that'll work. And I keep telling him that it won't. And she was dead right, because you can't just take 3 minutes of produced visual and audio with a reporter doing the old such and such went out for a packet of crisps one day and she never came back, and then you tell that story in a very traditional TV way. It doesn't work on social. The setup of it, everything about it has to be different, and it's that realisation, I suppose, of, okay, we know what this story is, how are we going to tell it, depending on where we put it.
Sure. And so in terms of a workflow then, if someone brings a really good story in to your newsroom, does that person work on the different outputs to different platforms, or does it go to different teams?
So the way it's set up, my team I look after Facebook and Twitter and a bit of Instagram. We've got a separate Instagram and Snapchat team, but that feeds in to the main content team. Video sits as a separate team, but obviously we work in tandem to put our schedule together, because it tends to go story, video on Facebook. And then obviously they will furnish other platforms as well. But it's like, well, okay, I've got this great video that's done well on Facebook. The Instagram team will then have a look at it, and they will do their own edit, because you can't just take a 3-minute video that's work on Facebook and whack it on Instagram. It just won't work. So the different elements of the content teams work very closely, I suppose. And I think previously we've never got it right all the time, and there is an element of treading on each other's toes at the time while being in each other's way, and that's a process that you'll always have to try and refine. But I think in terms of digital social newsrooms these days, you have to kind of have an eye on all of these platforms and the different teams within to make sure that it's getting done right.
So as that leads me on to kind of thinking that there's a lot of buzzwords about stuff like this, and convergence and all this kind of thing, and not being in silos, and working across different platforms. That leads me on to kind of asking, what are you looking for in journalists when you employ them? Is it the kind of awareness of this range of skills, or what is it that you're looking for in someone you might employ?
Yeah, I think so. I think ideally so many young journalists already live in that social world, actually, so you don't really have to tell them how to use Facebook or Instagram, because they know they're kind of used to storytelling in their own daily lives already, which is a big plus, but it's a big change to, I suppose, when I started 20 years ago in this industry, I suppose, and then watched kind of digital become a thing, and then watched social become a thing. You're suddenly finding lots of young trainees that already they innately understand social because they've been using it for 10 years. And all they need to understand is how you apply it to journalism. So that's kind of, doing your research, standing your facts up, putting calls in if there needs to be, getting your permissions, making sure your copyright's okay. It's the nuts and bolts that you always need in the industry, irrespective of what platform you're working for. So actually, most people are quite intuitive with social anyway. I suppose an understanding of a good story, natural empathy is always good, an understanding of how to tell a story really well. Quite often you'll get people, they've got this great story, but the way it's told just doesn't really work. The detail is too late, or the big hook that's going to get people in is an afterthought. So it's about structure often, and that's always been the way, whether it's print or video or whatever it might be. But kind of, I think just people who are good at spotting stories, understand that social audience, understand what you can and can't do on social media as well. Like Facebook has a very tight set of community guidelines that they update regularly, and so you need to have an understanding of the rules of the game. I think that's
Sure, and so I suppose when you're talking about structure, it's someone who, if you have an eye for a story, it's also then about having an eye for what's going to sell that story, if you like, in terms of the headline, that is fundamentally what people are going to see through search engines
Yeah,
or social media.
yeah, absolutely. And it's that balance, isn't it? Of is it clickbait, or are you just leaving the audience to do enough? And if you are asking the audience to do a little bit to give you that click to find out the rest of the story, is it a satisfying click, or will they feel like they're being duped a little bit? Sometimes you can give it all away on social media. You find big publishing companies still don't get the clickbait thing, and they will just, what you did next will surprise you, and no one falls for that anymore. And also Facebook will just bang your page for spamming. You can tell the main details of the story, because if it's good, people want to read the rest of it anyway. You don't have to clickbait people in. You can give away more than you think, because is the content good? Is it quality? Will people enjoy it? Is it useful? If the answer is yes, then it's fine. You can kind of give as much or as little away as you want, really. Don't try and be clever and trick people, because they won't go for it. And actually, a social audience, all you're doing there is giving them ammo to tell you how bad you are and what you're doing. Social journalism is an ongoing conversation all the time these days. So as soon as you put something out on social, you will get an instant reaction from your audience. Now, you want that reaction to be good, so you need to think about that. So don't try and bullshit them. Don't try and clickbait them. Tell them the good stuff. If you want to evoke a reaction, give them something that will do that.
Sure, and something that you mentioned was a sort of everyday heroes thing, which is always done well in journalism, whether it's print, TV, but and also does really well on social as well. How important and how useful now is social media for finding those kind of stories? So, like, just winding back from the kind of sharing and publicizing and engaging, how much do your team use social media to identify stories?
It's massive. It's massive. I suppose it's the modern day equivalent of when I started. As a journalist, you would do the ring rounds of the police stations and the hospitals and the pub landlords and all the people who might have stories. You would do your rounds. You'd go and sit in the pub for an hour and see if the landlord had anything interesting, or you would ring your sources up. If you're not in, and this used to be true at the MEN, all the reporters were told, if you're not in at least 2 Facebook groups relevant to the patch that you're working on, whether it's just the local area or a trade group that's relevant to what you write about, if you're not in at least 2 Facebook groups, you're doing your job wrongly. Why would you not go there? All the stories are there. Why would you not be in the middle of all of it? So the idea of kind of being embedded in communities via social is absolutely vital to being a good journalist these days, and you will build relationships there, and you will end up having people come to you with stories, because they will know you and they will trust you, and you will be part of that community, and that's really, really important. So yeah, we saw stuff from all over the internet. There are tools that you can see what's doing well for the Facebook pages. You can spot tweets before they go viral. You can get a sense of big Instagram posts before they go so big. You can track videos that suddenly start to pick up over a period of time or whatever. So all the tools are there for you. You need to kind of know how to use them. But yeah, I suppose it's, I don't know, like old school journalism. I used to get told, like, you get into work at 8:30, 9 o'clock. And your editor would just be like, right, off you go then. I'll see you about 2:30. And you had to come back with like a load of stories. Just like, off you go. Go and talk to people. It's the same, but you don't have to leave your office now. And so what I'd hate to see is the complacency of that kind of like, well, it's on the internet, so we'll write about it. Or someone said that on Facebook. Like, well, have you called them to check that it's true? And that they're happy to be written about. And that's the big thing, I think, in social, especially with an audience our size. People used to love being in a local paper, because local paper circulations weren't that big, really, and they could point to a nice picture of themselves, and it was all very nice. You put someone on the internet these days with a comment section underneath it, you are opening them up to a massive, massive audience. So you kind of have to get people comfortable with it as well. So if you're if you're writing for a publication that's got a big social following, and we do it always, you need to kind of prepare people for like, well, we're going to put you on a Facebook page with 38 million people on it. Are you ready for that? It's that responsibility to your contributors, I suppose, as well. But yeah, I mean, Facebook's such a rich, and Twitter is such a rich ground of stories. There's no excuse for spending 3 hours on the internet and not finding any stories.
Sure. And kind of leading on from that, something that I kind of worry about sometimes is in our reliance to use the internet to source stories, do we overlook that it's still important to just talk to people and have a human conversation with the people that you want to write a story about? And
100%.
yeah, so are your reporters like literally on the phone calling people up and trying to have a conversation with them once they've kind of made that initial introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. You always want more context and more background about a thing. Whether it's just ringing Netflix up to confirm that the scene is right, or what I said to my journalists a couple of years ago is, cultivate those relationships in the areas that are important to us. So big entertainment stuff, for example, we have really good relationships with TV stations and studios, whether it's the BBC or Channel 4 or Netflix or Sky or whatever. And my reporters will just drop in with their contacts over there in the PR office every week or two, just to go, all right, what's going on? Anything happening? Anything we can have a go at? Anything good? And just being in their minds, basically, so that when you do really need them and you ring them, they'll answer the call. Or they'll ring you back quickly because they've got that relationship, rather than it's just, this is a journalist ringing up, wanting to know something. On the flip side of that, it's that basic fact check as well. It's just good journalistic behaviour. It's like, well, such and such is happening. Because my first question will be to you, a reporter, how do you know? And if the answer is, well, it's on the internet, that's not good enough. We'll ring them up and find out. Have you rung them up to check that that's true? Or have you seen it in a press release? Or how do you know? Yeah. So as a reporter, you need to protect yourself that you've done the homework, because if it comes back and bites you on the arse, it will bite me on the arse as well. And that is not a good situation to find yourself in. Trust me, as a reporter, you want to be able to, when your editor turns around and says, did you make that phone call and check? If the answer is not yes, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I'm sure this happened to you as well, just being absolutely bawled out by bosses in newsrooms when you're finding your way.
Terrifying. But the best piece of advice I was ever given, actually, by an editor was, if I answer your question, or if anyone ever asks you a question, I suppose, and the answer to that question is, I don't know, just say, I don't know. Because it will save us all a load of time and hassle in the long run. Because if you just try and fudge something to get away with it, because you've kind of overpromised this story a little bit, and it's not quite what you thought it would be, and now you've got to backtrack a little bit, and just be honest and admit it. Because if you fudge a fact, your editor will back you, and if you then string them up because you've not been entirely honest, that will all come back to you with 10 times the force. And I know this from bitter experience. So, yeah, if you don't know, say you don't know. If you haven't checked something, say you haven't checked something. But you will go back and check, and I will let you know. And just make sure it's the belt and braces approach, isn't it? Make sure you've covered your own arse, really, I suppose, so that nothing comes back to bite you on it later.
Yeah, good advice always. Just to clarify something, people might think, Lad Bible is very socially engaged. It's got a young audience and young workforce, but just give me a sense of like how important the phone is, and picking up the phone and talking to people, on a daily basis for your reporters.
There is no substitute for human relationships, I suppose. People like people. So my stories, what people do. Well, people like people. People want to see themselves in stories all the time. People want to build up relationships with other people, and there's no substitute for it, really. I think as a journalist, your job is to be very close to people. If you distance yourself because you haven't picked up the phone to check a thing, the years of training were pointless then, weren't they? Because if you're not fair to pick up a phone and just ask someone a question, you're no different to anyone who isn't a journalist. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That kind of like proves that you give a shit about getting this right, and the only way you can do that often is just ringing someone up and asking them.
Sure. So moving on from that, can you give me a sense of what's a typical day for a reporter at Lad Bible, and also in terms of I'm sure this varies, but how many stories might one of your reporters produce on a daily basis?
Yeah, so my writers will produce anywhere between kind of 7 and 10 stories a day, depending on what they're writing on. So there's your daily kind of just treadmill list where you're going through the stories of the day, and everyone kind of does the same stuff. You'll notice that a lot of stories in a lot of places are the same because we buy stories in from agencies, as many people do. Or we'll see something go big somewhere else and we'll do a take on it, as other people will do. So there's always that daily churn. So probably about 6, 7 stories of those, and then my writers are targeted on original content as well. It's really important to me to be able to mix original content, whether it's stuff branded up as Daily Ladness or Lad Files, or just we did a piece this week about the pub industry and what its worries are about lockdown and will they be able to reopen. And one of my reporters got round 3 or 4 people in the industry and spoke to them and wrote it up into a longer piece. So yeah, I mean, across the week, it's 70. You're easily talking 50 stories a week.
50 stories a week, and some of them are going to involve like talking to original sources. At least some of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so some will be slightly more labour intensive. You have to go and do 2 or 3 interviews and find the hook. I mean, the editor will always hopefully, will always brief you properly and tell you what they want. So I might say to one of my team, right, this is the big talking point at the minute. Can we find someone who works in that industry to find out what it's like? Can we find an outside voice to give a bit of an overview? Can we find a really good case study to kind of make this story really personal? And then I'll kind of work with the writer to make sure that it's the right tone and we're going after the right areas and all that kind of stuff. And you will kind of learn the structure of a longer piece of content. Sometimes something happens and I want that in 5 minutes. Boris Johnson falls out the window. Right, I want 50 words in 2 minutes and let's get it out and get it up. So it can depend from like go, like breaking news stuff to just the everyday kind of news content that you need to run through your site to, it is Monday, can you get me this piece by Friday, please?
Sure.
So, and I don't have time to kind of hold your hand all the way through. Editors don't. When they ask you for something, they'll make sure you're briefed well, and then I'll ask you for it at a certain time, and that is it. I want it by then. If you're having a problem, come to me or a news editor or whatever, but don't just suddenly turn up on Friday with nothing, with the kind of like, oh, well, I tried to call them, but they didn't call back, and then I see this, and then one of my water pipes burst, and I don't have time to do it. Right now, I'm not interested. I just give you a deadline, expect it to be done. So you have to learn to manage your own time. You have to understand that while you are working on day-to-day content or breaking news content, you are spinning plates in the background of this longer stuff that you need for Friday. So, okay, I'm going to spend half an hour on Monday doing it, and then I'll spend half an hour on Tuesday, and then I'll ring this person on Wednesday. So you need to be really good at managing your own time. I think that's a really key skill.
Absolutely. And well, since we're talking in lockdown situations, we're both discussing this from in kitchen in my case, or a room in your house in another.
My kitchen has been massive for 6 weeks.
It's always the kitchen, isn't it?
Which is pretty dangerous. I hope that doesn't go on much longer. But yeah, so I'm near the kettle and the biscuit, which is okay.
Yeah, it's a definite upside. So COVID-19 and coronavirus, how has that changed the way that you're working? How are you adapting? And does it mean that you are not able to do things that you are normally allowed to do, or are we sort of advanced enough technologically that it's just a different way of working?
Yeah, because I think from a practical point of view, it just means the physical environment of a newsroom is really important, I think, and I miss that a little bit. I miss us all being together and the kind of chaos and the camaraderie and just the ability to look over the desk and go, have you done that? Or what are you doing at the minute? Or when am I getting this piece by? But, I'm in like a million chat groups, so all you have to do is, I suppose, and that first week was about just finding the new systems and structures that were going to work. So we set up a daily chat group with everyone who's on rota that day, just so we can focus discussion around today and today's content. But then I have a chat group with the news editors, which is, the journalists don't need to worry about that. I've got a different chat group with the journalists, news editors don't need to worry about. I've got chat groups with the video team, which my team don't need to know. I'm talking to them. So it's that kind of just managing conversations, I suppose. I think you do end up realising how much you get dragged into in the office that isn't really that important, I suppose. But like the desk, can I have 5 minutes? And it doesn't actually turn out to be anything vaguely important. That's gone away, which is quite nice. I'm sure that will come back when we go back into the office environment. But no, been okay. Our audience is the same as it was. In fact, it's up slightly because people still want to consume content. That hasn't gone away. We are still busy. The workload, if anything, has gone up rather than down. So, and we did a big campaign around COVID-19 called Cutting Through, where we just did a load of fact-based articles about coronavirus rather than just whipping up fear or just going for any story about coronavirus because it would drive traffic. We took a very conscious decision early on that we weren't going to do that. And actually what we did do about coronavirus would have to be useful and led by experts. So we worked with the World Health Organization on pieces of content just to be really straight down the line and really kind of, listen, this is what you need to know, and this isn't coming from us, this is coming from people who know. And that was the way we approached that. And then I suppose that the other side of it is that people want to be distracted from the big thing that they know that they're worried about. So making sure we have that good content mix of other stuff. There's still other stuff going on in the world outside of this one big thing. And that's the thing about one big story can occasionally kill the rest of the news agenda. Makes it very difficult to think that there's anything else out there. Think back to Brexit, it was the same. So you have to work hard to make sure that you're finding the other stuff and you're reflecting what's going on outside of the one big thing to your audience.
Sure, and I guess the World Health Organization was keen to work with you because, I'm inferring because you were able to demonstrate that you could reach an audience that the traditional, outlets of the Beeb and Sky and Telegraph and Mail can't necessarily do.
Yeah, they came to us. They were really keen to work with us, and it was well received. I hope some people wrote some nice things about it, which is good. But for example, one of our biggest clients commercially is the government. We do a lot of campaigns with the government around public safety stuff, and Cutting Through as it was has kind of ended now, but we may work with the Cabinet Office to do similar bits of content. So we're plugged into some very big, serious networks, and the reason the likes of the government and 10 Downing Street and the WHO want to work with us is because they know we've got a really engaged audience, and a big audience, 18 to 50. It's kind of their key target, really. I suppose at that size, and we have conversations around our audience and what is our audience. Like, when it gets to nearly 40 million, our audience is everyone. Everyone. Like, everyone's in there, like Remainers, Leavers, Coldplay fans, whatever. Everyone's in there. So you can't be too precious about, that's not really that bad audience. Everyone is in that at 40 million. So you're not really shooting at anyone particularly. You just, and especially, so I suppose when it comes to like WHO and the government, they just see a really broad base of society within our audience. So they're really keen to be a part of that, really.
Sure, and I suppose an example of this was you asked a question at the daily coronavirus briefing. Was it last week? I think
it was. Yeah, it was on a Saturday. It was when the Home Secretary was there on a Saturday. I was surprised at the reaction. People seem very interested in it, but that's nice.
Yeah, I wonder if that's because the reaction, if anything, was as interesting as the question you asked, because there was a lot of people who raised eyebrows about that. And I guess from your perspective, it's not surprising that you were asked, but it seemed to be surprising to a lot of people who seem to finally grasp this idea that the media landscape is not what it once was.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think what it did, I suppose, was it opened my eyes a little bit to people's perceptions of what the media is are still quite narrow. A lot of people were really, really nice about it, I suppose, and perceptive enough to point that out. That media is changing and social is huge, and it's about brands that communicate well with their audience. Yeah, it's a weird one. I see it very much. It's two-sided. I think this is that you've got big traditional media brands, the BBC, the Mail, the Guardian, etc., who have history on their side, absolutely, and reputation as trusted media brand. But what they don't have and what they can't get to grips with just yet is how to engage that social audience and grow it. We've done that, but obviously we're younger, so we don't have that. We don't have what the BBC has. We never will. You can't create 100 years of broadcasting history. You just can't. That's fine. But what we do have is a very big audience, very engaged audience, and a publishing brand that people really trust. There's a reason why the audience is big. It's because they trust what we do and they trust what we tell them. So, I wasn't surprised in a way. I did just become that man from Mad Bible for 24 hours. kind of reduce my 20-year journalistic career to that man from Mad Bible. Like I kind of won it in a raffle or something, and had just been allowed to turn up. So like I've done dozens of political interviews over the years. I've been to the House of Commons many times. I've done loads of Westminster briefings. I've interviewed some of the most powerful, influential people in the world. It's not, that's the job. It's not new to me. I think it was just the Bible banner over it opened a few people's eyes. But like I say, for years and years, we've been plugged into government and big brands and big organisations to tell those stories and to kind of to work on those campaigns because our brand is trusted. So if it opens a lot of people's eyes, that's great. I did pick up 5,000 extra Twitter followers in 24 hours, which was a bit exhausting. I had to turn the notifications off for a little bit, but that was nice. It was kind of nice, and people were saying like, "Oh, how did you do it?" There's quite a few journalists that I know from other publications DMing me going, "How did you do it? How did you get on?" It's like, well, you just ring them up and ask. That's the first rule of journalism for anything. I was thinking, people always go, "Oh, how did you get to do that?" Just ask them. Just ring them up and go, "Can we do that, please? Because we've got a really big audience." And they'll either say yes or no.
Yeah.
And I said yes. So we asked the question on the third day. She said, "Listen, really keen to ask a question. Obviously, this is our audience. I'm really interested in this kind of area." And yeah, I just got a phone call Saturday morning saying, "Can you do it today?" So I was like, "Oh, all right." So then I had to go around my house and find a bit of wall that was acceptable. It's easier said than done. You look around your house normally and go, "I live in quite a nice house." When you need to find a bit of walls for national television to 22 million people, it's very stressful.
Yeah, I get the feeling a lot of walls have been cleared of journalists and pundits over the last month or so. Or some books have been.
Emergency bookcases,
Yeah.
new books have been purchased. I've got a big green armchair, and that became a big thing on Twitter for a bit. Like, oh, I could share. It's just, and that's social summed up, I think, actually, and in terms of the way that we look at things and the way that mainstream publishers, if you want to call them that, do. I go on telly to ask the Prime Minister a question. Most of what the social audience are concentrating on is my chair. That's social publishing summed up in a nutshell, I think. So you look at the big picture, you find the thing within the thing that people are really interested in. That's the thing you go after. So I kind of remember Champions League final last year, there was a streaker. That becomes the story of the Champions League final. Alex from Glasgow gets on stage and does something with Dave. That becomes the story of Glastonbury. Not Glastonbury itself, it's that thing within the thing. That's what really good social publishers are good at conveying, I think.
Sure, that's a really good point and a really good way to end this. Just before I let you go, Simon, I've got a couple of quick fire questions for you, which will test every fibre of your being.
Okay.
Have you got a favourite journalist, and who is it, and why?
Oh, come on. What, on my team or just generally?
No, like anyone that you like, anyone that you follow, anyone you've always admired, has been an inspiration, a mentor, anything like that.
I really actually. So I've written about. I've been a business journalist for a long time. I've written about food for a long time. So my heroes cut across loads of different platforms, those different areas. I was obsessed with Kate Adie when I was growing up. Obsessed with Kate Adie, the war reporter. I was like, gosh, she's just going to the most dangerous place on earth. So she's amazing. I love is good.
Yeah, great
I
show.
like. Who do I like? Oh, I kind of respect all of them, really. I've worked with them like Nina Warhurst, Flick Feather at the BBC. Northwest is great. I work with her, and she's great. You work with a lot of people, and often you just stand and watch them and just go, oh, they're good at what they do. Like I love Charlie Brooker's writing. He's a journalist. Let's not forget that's kind of how he started. So, they're kind of wide and varied, I suppose. But yeah, it all started with KKD, really.
Yeah, I think everyone's got someone who kind of started them off on that road, haven't they? But
He
Katie,
was the one who I looked at him and just thought, well, I want to be like you. I want to do what you do.
sure, no, that's good. Do you have? And this is I'm from a print background. I think you've worked in print a fair amount over the course of your career as well. So I always have a number of mag subscriptions on the go. Do you have any, and what are they?
Do you know what, magazines, not so much these days. I give my £2 a month to The Guardian so I can support their content. I've got a Times login. I used to buy like NME and like music mags I was big into, like Select back in the day. I was massively into that.
Yeah,
I don't
me
know if
too.
that's the thing anymore. Magazines, I'll consume it all. I'm not loyal to brands, and I think that's a good lesson, I think, in that why people are surprised at that Bible, the presidential, the Prime Minister or briefing or whatever. I think these days, that brand loyalty thing just isn't as strong as it used to be. So when I was at the MEN, I ended up at some party full of 20-year-olds, which was a mistake. And some girl and her boyfriend asked me, like, oh, what do you do? So I said, like, oh, I'm a journalist at the MEN. And she just went, oh, I know that. It's a Facebook page, isn't it? And I was deeply offended for about 20 seconds. You just think, oh, do you know what, though, actually? Okay, to you I am, but to the bloke in the supermarket over the road, we're an app. And to Gladys in Bolton, we're a paper. And to loads of office workers, we're a website. You are what you are to people. You can't get too hung up on it. Social generation, they just see you on their Facebook feed. And that's kind of it. So very few people seek brands out, I think, these days. I think we're kind of the last of the old guard for that one. I'll just consume it all. I love all of it. Like Homes and Garden, yes. Food magazines, 100%. Condé Nast Traveller, yes. I'll just read all of it. I'll read anything.
Sure. No, that's a good answer. I think I've got 3 or 4 subscriptions on the go, but they kind of come in and out. I'll let one go, bring another one in, and like you say,
yeah, a little bit. We live in a subscription life these days, I suppose. I've got Netflix, Spotify, Disney Plus, Now TV, Beer 24. Things just arrive at my house. Contact lenses, like you name it. We live a very subscription-led life these days. I think that's interesting that journalism still hasn't quite broken through into that though.
it is an interesting one, isn't it? I suppose The Athletic is going to be the poster boy for what happens there.
Maybe. I think often people just assume it's done for free. Is it that? Maybe it's that. I effectively subscribe, don't I, to the BBC because I pay my license £12.50 a month. Why does no one do that for other forms of journalism? Like I would, rather than paywalls, I would pay 1 pence per article across all of the media that I consumed and just be billed at the end of the month. I would do that. And it's just like, all right, I've paid £14 a month this month to read articles on the internet. I do that. I don't understand why that the model of commercialising online journalism hasn't really worked. It's an audience thing. I think it's expectation, but it always baffles me.
I've always thought that a lot of people don't necessarily differentiate between what is consumable fluff and what is like quality journalism. It takes time and money, but
I think you're right, and I think the realisation that the two aren't mutually exclusive. Like the FT aside, most publishing brands have a mix of quite quick throwaway content that is just done to keep audience ticking over, and to inform and all that kind of stuff. But it's not, like McDonald's has released a new burger. That's not going to take a week of research. That we could do that in half an hour. But also, you will do those longer pieces that do take a lot of time and do take a lot of journalism and are valuable and are difficult. I think people need to understand that you're never really one or the other. Both happen within the same brand, by the same writers, in the same newsroom, just for different reasons. So maybe it's that.
Yeah, I guess that in a circular kind of way goes back to the idea that journalists need to be consuming things, understand how lots of different things work, be open to writing different kinds of stories, and all of that can coexist within the same job and the same person.
Absolutely, yeah. That idea of being used to kind of like jack of all trades, master of none, I suppose. Really, I always taught my lot, and I suppose from 20 years of doing it myself, you need to get yourself in a position where you know enough about everything. You don't have to know everything about anything, really. You just have to know enough about everything. Know something about everything. So be interested in everything. Like one of my team was taking a piss at me today for something. I referenced like something the Spice Girls were doing. And they're like, "You're a Spice Girls fan." It's like, no, I just know about them because it's my job. Like I know enough about everything. It's my job. Like you have to absorb enough of stuff so that when you do get asked to write about a certain thing that maybe you've never written about before, you've got a good base understanding of it. You have to be an expert in it. Lean on the experts when you're writing those pieces, but don't kind of. Here's the thing, and I'm kind of going off a tangent, for which I apologise, but Game of Thrones, biggest TV show on the planet for a time, massive for us, huge audience. At least 3 of my team didn't watch it, which I thought was phenomenal. I don't watch it, but I know enough about it.
Yeah.
I can tell you the characters and the broad plotline. 3 of my team like me, I don't know anything about it. It's like, what? Why? It's like massive. Just get your head around it a little bit. You don't have to sit and watch 27 hours of it. Just watch a 10-minute catch-up on YouTube. It's like, know enough about everything.
I can't explain how similar that your situation is to sometimes talking to students who can be absolutely baffled that you know about music that they like, for example. And an example from a few years.
It's my job to know. It's my job to know.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember a few years ago at a different university, I sort of ripped up my lesson plans because David Bowie had died on the morning. I said, right, we're going to find different ways of telling this story across all sorts of things. And a sort of hesitant hand went up and someone said, so I said, any questions? And someone said, yeah, I've got a question. Who's David Bowie? And you think, I mean, you don't have to own station to station to understand that, one of the biggest sort of news stories of the year is just broken. So I guess it's similar to that. One final question, Simon, because I'm aware that we both need to get back to our jobs and children. Yeah. We kind of touched on this a little bit already. I was going to ask you what's the best piece of advice you've received, but you kind of touched on that. So I'm going to turn it around and say we're going to have a whole cohort of young student journalists graduating in the next 3 months to 3 years. What's the single best piece of advice you could give them on the spot?
Say yes to everything. When you're starting out, I think if you get stationed at a paper or a magazine or whatever it might be, I did the first 10 years of my career in trade press, right? So writing about various things from business to gambling to football, so all sorts of stuff, and local papers and whatever else. But what I always found was really useful was when you get invited to stuff, no matter how small it might seem, just say yes and just go, because that's the way you drop yourself into networks of people quickly and get yourself known as well. Like suddenly people know that you're Simon Binns from the NN because you're always at everything. You're being like, if everyone has to say no to an invite, just say yes to it, because you might meet someone who's got a really good story. You might not, but nothing ventured, nothing gained, and at least you're building up your network of contacts really quickly. So yeah, say yes to everything. Be ready for anything, I suppose. And if you're kind of pitching people for work experience or for jobs or whatever, understand what they are and what they do and their audience and the kind of content they do. Do a bit of homework. Don't just throw your CV out to 100 places telling them about you. Like, we get a load of those, and honestly, you're all pretty similar, really. And we'll only skim your CV because we just don't have time. What I suppose what people like me want to see is, okay, well, you know who we are and what we do, and you understand the audience, and you kind of get what the brand's about. If you could convey that, I will take a lot more notice than just like, I've just graduated, I need a job. So yeah, you and a load of other people. So kind of show me why if I brought you into my newsroom, why you would be an asset, and that's all about understanding the audience and understanding the culture of the business, really.
Sure, that's absolutely great advice. I was going to ask at some point how people should pitch to you as well, so thank you for covering that as well, because that's something that
Send me
comes
an
up a
email,
lot.
find me on Twitter. You know, I'll normally try and respond to people, and just be open minded to stuff. Really, you will. And always appreciate it. Always appreciate it. Like I feel incredibly lucky to do the job that I do. I always I make sure that I appreciate the pinch me moments, of which there are many. Like, you know, the Prime Ministerial briefing, or going to interview Vin Diesel in Miami or whatever, which is what I did in January. Just like, you never take it for granted, because it is special, and it is privilege. So just make sure you enjoy it, really.
Superb. Thank you so much for your time, Simon.
Nice one. Thank you, Robin.
Okay, mate.